welcome to the AI in Education podcast. Today, Ray, we've got a very special guest again, Dr. Jo Orlando, digital wellbeing researcher, TV presenter. Like, her resume is huge. She's one of Australia's leading voices on digital technology, AI, and how it's shaping the lives of learning and young people. I first came across Jo when I was working at Western Sydney University multiple moons ago, and I've been a fan of Jo's work ever since. And every time I see her on the TV, I'm like waving to the TV, not that she can see me. But I saw her in the Independent Schools in New South Wales conference in the Gold Coast about 2 or 3 weeks ago. That's going to age this episode straight away. However, she was amazing and talking to tech leaders about AI and where the trends are going, and also about technology, because it's weaved together. I suppose in this episode, hopefully we'll explore what it really means to children and how AI is really pushing the boundaries in multiple areas of their lives at home and in school. So, Jo, welcome to the podcast. And where do we find you today?
Thank you. I'm in Sydney in my front of office, and I see you waving, Dan. I know you're there.
Good.
So thank you for those waves. It's wonderful.
No problem at all.
I'm really excited about this conversation because do you remember, Dan, we had the series a few series ago where we were trying to learn from students rather than learn about students.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't what people said they should be doing or what they were doing. It was students talking about what they were doing. And there's so many surprises. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation because, Jo, I know you're from that same mindset, which is let's be talking to them rather than at them.
Yeah, because we mostly really don't know what they're doing. We think we know. There's a lot of headlines about what we know. There's a lot of policies about what we think we know about them, and a lot of legislation about what we think we know about them. Young people are very much part of my interview process because how can we actually teach them, guide them, support them, unless we actually really know 100% what we're doing? So this isn't just guesswork. It has to be informed by evidence. So I'm all around the country, everywhere, schools, homes, on school buses, social places, everywhere and anywhere, and on social media a lot, just kind of tapping into how young people understand their digital lives, what they do, the kinds of decisions they make, the kinds of support that they're given that works, that doesn't work. I really try to understand it through their eyes so that we as adults can then actually support them and guide them in a way that is real and meaningful.
And you mentioned then about, around Australia. So I think it's important because we got listeners across Australia, but also in different countries as well. Australian students and rural areas and city areas are very, very different, right?
Absolutely. So I'm in Sydney right now, and a lot of people know where Sydney is and what it is. It's the city here, but Australia is such a diverse and such a large country. So we've got our cities, but we've mostly got a lot of remote areas. So I travel all around the country to all of those different kinds of areas. So the way we think about young people on technology in the suburbs of Sydney, the middle-class suburbs of Sydney, is very different to the way we think about the, young people on technology in those rural and remote areas, those towns that young people never leave. When the screen is their kind of window to what's outside their town. You think, well, they probably get to go to the other towns close by. Not necessarily. It depends where you live. It depends on socioeconomic status, what your parents, what your family do, your home context. There's so many factors. We are so diverse in terms of geography and really diverse in terms of culture. We're all Australian, but I was in a family not that long ago. It was an Arabic family, a very big Arabic group in Australia. And the child was gaming late. The 10-year-old is playing video games late. You think, well, bad parent. She's such a bad parent. Why is she allowing her child to do that? But in just talking to her, she said, he plays with his cousins and they're in Saudi Arabia and they play in Arabic. So for her, it was all about, well, this is helping my son keep in contact with his family, keep his language up, keep his culture up. So the kinds of ways we're thinking about children on tech can be quite cliche, mainstream, but in Australia, it's far from that. There's so many ways of thinking about it because we are so diverse and so big.
You've done a lot of work in the technology side of it and educational technology, and the sense of belonging is coming through as well with what you're saying there. So just stepping back and maybe reflecting on, you've seen that trend over the last 10 years or whatever, technology in the classroom and technology in personal lives has gone on an interesting path in Australia. Then we've kind of hit the social media delay. At the same time, we've got AI compounding things. What's your general thoughts on where we are today and how we've got there, and any learnings that you can think about?
Oh, so many learnings, so many. What's been interesting is seeing the whole path. So I've been in this area for about 15 years, maybe a bit longer. I was obviously a child when I started. But seeing that path, so from just tech going into schools big time and into homes big time. And then there was a whole lot of debates around, what are children actually doing on there and it displacing play. And that kind of argument and that kind of issue and challenge has been consistent. That's the one thing. Now, screen time is almost a dirty word, isn't it? Like screen time children, that's wrong. So it's got to that point where schools are getting a lot of pressure from outside the community, from governments to cap screen time. And we're seeing that come out of Victoria big time. So the kind of sentiment or the dominant kind of ideas in the community, whether they're based on evidence or not, are really hitting schools. But also we're at this really interesting dilemma now. We've got social media that's been banned, holding accounts by children who are 16 and under. And I was very integral in that whole social media ban, providing advice to the government, did a lot of work, a lot of commentary, a lot of evidence.
I saw a lot
around
of that on the news, by the way. It was brilliant, all of the spots that you did on the news. It was really good as a parent to be able to get you a commentary on that.
Oh, thank you. That commentary is actually now officially part of the Australian history. It's been archived by the Film and Sound Archive in Australia. It's just hit there a couple of days ago.
Wow.
So that's that ban. Well, we've just got the stats here, and about 70% of young people are still using social media. So at this point, it's not really working well. And then we've got AI, which is coming in full force, like every second it's changing, isn't it? It's really full force. Young people are using it a lot. Schools are kind of grappling with how do we deal with this, but no guardrails around that, or very little. So we've got this really uneven thing happening. So historically, if I look along the path, I think we're more confused than ever about how to support or how to just kind of position technology in terms of young people and how they use it, the value they get, and how we kind of protect them, because we need to do both. So we are in a bigger mess than ever, I think, at this point. It doesn't mean that there's no way out, but I think there's so many confused ideas about what to do, how to do it, what not to do, that kind of second guessing. It's a really big, very complicated mess at this point.
And I suppose, sorry to keep going down this pathway before we get into the AI bit, but like you mentioned again about that equity piece, and I suppose that's the danger as well that we're seeing from conversations we're having, is the fact that this technology should be closing that equity gap. We want to get everybody accessing technology because it'll support them in the learning. If every single student in Australia can have a personal tutor with AI, that's amazing. But because of the way policy at the top level then gets disseminated to each state, and then each state does their own thing, it seems to fragment quite a lot. So I just wondered if there are any learnings for people listening in today on how they can implement things.
There are, one of the things you asked me right at the beginning is, what am I doing? One of the things I'm doing right now, well, I'm doing a million things, but one of the things that I'm doing is I'm working with New South Wales government policy. I'm working as part of the Australian Public Policy Institute, working out a new way to develop policy around ed tech, because equity is the thing, isn't it? We want all young people to be able to use tech in ways that actually help them, support them, value add. That's the whole equity piece, that all the young people should be able to do that. And, years ago, and still often, we think of equity, those who have got access and those who don't. But access is just like one part of the puzzle now, because I'm finding young people have got too much access. They come to school because they've been gaming all night, or they've been just on a screen too much, or doing the kind of things that really drain their focus and things on a screen, and then arriving to school. So that's not, they don't have access, they have the wrong kind of access, So the way I'm seeing it now is equity is, there's four things to it. So one is they're able to actually learn well with technology. The other one is that they're actually able to learn well but safely at the same time. So, they might have a great maths app, but if it's collecting kind of unnecessary data about them and selling it off, well, that's not a safe environment for them. I think the well-being part of it needs to come in, the whole screen time thing. The child is coming to school with way too much screen time already. Then them using that maths app, well, maybe that's probably, we need to think about if that's the best thing for that child. And then equity, that all young people have equal access as well. So I'm working on this new approach that actually thinks about those 4 aspects that underpins a good EdTech policy. It's not just if they learn, but if it's all those other factors at play, because it's quite complicated now. It's not like it was 10 years ago.
It's interesting because when you talk about EdTech, AI is really fascinating because AI isn't EdTech. AI is a consumer product that arrived and hit the headlines because of ChatGPT and the fact that any consumer could go in there and start chatting with it and get this magical moment. So the students are adopting it whether or not it's being made available to them as EdTech. They're not using it in that way at all. They're just kind of using it as a helpful buddy.
Yeah, helpful buddy. I had an argument with my friend today. What should I say to them? What should I text? Or this boy likes me. What should I say to them? So it's that decision making, outsourcing that decision making. And I think that's something that is, well, it's a worry. It's interesting. It's understanding how they're using it. I think that's an important thing. But also, something that's coming on board soon, which you guys probably know about, but a lot of people mightn't know about, is things like ChatGPT. If kids are using the free version, ads are now being threaded through the responses that you get. So you might be asking your AI, I've got this problem, it could be quite an intimate problem, whatever it is. And then the responses will have ads sitting alongside those very vulnerable responses that you get from ChatGPT. So Australia, it's just started here a couple of weeks ago. We are, of course, one of the first countries to get, we're often the first country to get these kind of new innovations. But I think that brings up another kind of issue. Not only are they using it to do their homework, to do their university assignments, to ask the intimate questions that maybe they would have asked a parent, but now advertising is going to sit alongside those responses. So you can see there's a lot of vulnerabilities and a lot of what I call AI literacy that really needs to be understood, developed, and be very proactive. Because if we wait 12 months to start to think, oh, well, yeah, high school kids, they need kind of AI literacy, they've already been using it for 3 years at a really vulnerable point in their life. So I think sooner the better.
It's an interesting one with that. Like, I've never seen a technology have such an impact as a parent. My son last year, when he was in this is the example I always think about. He was in year 12, a year of AI already.
Yeah.
And he'd already been embedded in the way that he learns, and he knew the process of his HSCs, which is the New South Wales exam. So he knew the entire kind of process of that. So he didn't really put AI and that together. But my son, just a year younger than him, and absolutely meshed the two together, and he could see where AI could help him with his studies for his HSC. And he's in year 12 this year. And it was a remarkable, almost polar opposites of the use of the technology. It's just happening so quickly.
It's so fast. I'm sure since we've been talking, a whole lot of changes have happened in AI.
Yeah, you're right.
It's crazy. I've got 3 kids as well, and one of my sons is really into AI. And for Mother's Day, let's do this big AI combined workshop together. I'll show you what I'm learning, and you show me what you're learning. So that was awesome. But I think also when it first really hit the scene, which was maybe 2.5 years ago, I remember interviewing a young person who had just started uni, and they said, now is prime time to cheat, and it made like the headlines in the Sydney Morning Herald, this research that I was doing, because he said, I can use it, it can do all my work for me, and it's going to take years before the university even catch up to what I'm doing. And he was probably right. But so there is a lot of worry about AI doing the hard part of learning, just giving the end product. There is that worry. And I think that's still the case for a lot of young people, just putting the question in, maybe refining it a bit, getting the output and submitting it. I think that's it. I think a lot of young people still haven't learned how to use it properly like adults, and understanding what properly is important too.
And Joe, given the adversarial conversation in education about AI
Yeah.
and student use at the moment, one of the things that I think is missing in the conversation is AI can be a dual use technology. It can be used for good and it can be used for bad. And in learning, it can enhance learning or it can diminish
Yeah.
learning. And because the conversation is, oh, don't use AI, nobody's having the conversation with the students, or it doesn't feel like we're having the conversation to say, this is how you use it well. This is where you definitely should not use it. Not because we say so, but because it's going to harm your learning. It feels like there should be a champion for the students to help them understand the
Yeah.
the positives and the negatives. We've talked about it on the podcast a few times, Dan. The personal trainer, you don't get your personal trainer to lift your weights. You get your personal trainer to push you. And I've seen out of all the research around AI, exactly the same. If you use AI to switch your brain off, you're not going to learn, but you can use it to push you and to help you develop new skills.
That's right. Young people are probably getting all their information from TikTok and Instagram. And if you go on there, you'll see there is a lot of like not good advice, but there's also a lot of scare kind of clickbaity kind of videos, and that would be informing what they're doing. But, anyone I know, including neuroscientists and all the people who are like on guard here with brain rot, and AI use kind of doing all your decision making for you, what the science actually shows, and anyone who's using it effectively will use it this one way. Okay. So you've got a question, you might put it into AI, what's the something, it'll spit out the information. I always think the second question is where the real work starts. It's all right. Tell me the gaps in your thinking. Tell me the pros and cons in my thinking. What haven't I thought of? What do I still need to look up? Where's the evidence? So it's this interrogation of AI. Like you're helping me, but I always think of it as like a dumb, smart assistant, like really smart, but kind of dumb. So let's work this out. So using it as your thinking buddy, like a sparring partner, like a thinking sparring partner. And that's the way young people should be using it. So if they're going to use it. So sure, it might be helping them write an assignment, but let's use it to actually unpack the thinking, the parameters, where the gaps are. Like that's not one prompt. It's not two prompts. It's probably 40 or 50 prompts, really unpacking. We've often thought about, using technology and the need for critical thinking. It's critical thinking like that's the heart of using AI well. It's all critical thinking. Do not accept everything it says. Because if you look at those graphs where most of the information comes from with ChatGPT, you guys have probably seen it. Most of it comes from Reddit, right? That's where most of the information comes from. And the second one is something like LinkedIn. And they're using those spaces because of the large language models. They're trying to get that kind of human thinking, human way of writing and questioning. So a lot of the information comes from there. So if you know that, then you're going to think, well, hey, this isn't kind of necessarily scientists giving me this information. This is, someone over there asking a question at 2 a.m., just putting it out there. So that it's that real interrogation. I think of it like a sparring partner for your thinking. Don't accept what it says. Just keep asking, keep questioning, keep saying, where's the gap in your thinking? Where's the gap in my thinking? Those kinds of questions.
So what do we need to do then as a school to keep pace with this rapid change with AI? What should schools be doing? What are you seeing? And then I suppose a supplementary question is, if that's what schools are doing, what should parents be doing?
Yeah. Look, I think first up, and this is often my advice, is just ask the young people what they're doing, but ask it in a way that's not judgmental. As adults, we often feel we need to get a bit judgmental about, well, you should be off your screen and, just get off there. That's no good. And young people really respond in that and they kind of really shut down. I know when I interview young people as part of my research, they're always so surprised that I'm not judging, that I'm a little bit in awe of what they're doing because well, that's amazing what you're doing. So I think having these genuine, really open discussions, that's really what's missing now in schools and in homes. Maybe young people get a great teacher who they love, who they can confide in, who'll have these conversations. But overall, I find they're not. Overall, 99%, they're not. It's just these pockets every now and then. Find out from them without consequences to them. If they're going to tell you, yes, I use ChatGPT most nights, it helps me learn this, or it helps me work out my protein intake, or it's helping me because I don't understand this part of maths, all that. And then use that as the basis for what's next. Because you can't work out what's next unless you actually know what now is. I think that's really important. You don't need a researcher to come in. You just kind of need to have an anonymous kind of survey or something where they feel they're not going to be judged. I think that's really important. I think a second one is to know that it is a constantly shiftable state. It's always in a state of innovation. I don't know if it's actually going to stop. We're not in the foreseeable future. So you're dealing with this. It's almost a bit of a wild card. You're dealing with something that is constantly changing. So locking down policies or practices that lock down aren't necessarily going to work. You rather need principles around it, but it's also constantly just checking in with young people, because often the way young people use technology is very different to the way adults use it. It's seriously different. We don't even think like that when it comes to technology. We just don't. We're in two different camps, in terms of technology users. So I think don't be afraid. I always say, like, just drop the attitude, adults. Just drop the attitude. Get to where the young people are, because then, only then, can we actually genuinely guide them and support.
But I totally agree with you. But do you not think, though, that we do, like with AI, because it's coming so quickly, that there's probably parents listening to the wireless, as Ray would say, listening in now, and think, screaming at the radio, go, oh, like I've got to tell, I've got to at least be responsible here, a
Yeah.
bit like we do with knives or guns or things like that. There
Sure.
are consequences to using these things. So yes, I listen to my kids, and I'm a parent that's fallen into this trap as well, and I should know better
Yeah.
because I'm in tech. But my kids, I've kind of let them loose on it and let them manage it. I've got certain parental controls, but not so much that'll kind of like suffocate them. And I'll have conversations with them, but maybe not as I should have had conversations with them. But I do feel as if I have to talk to them, because I've had to have that conversation about Manosphere and Andrew Tate with one
Yeah.
of my kids. And it's harder once they've already experienced that to then roll it all back and go, look, Andrew Tate is like bad, and I've learned the hard way, I suppose. So is it a balance thing? Should we be a bit more proactive?
Oh, 100% we should be. And what we should be proactive about is just having conversations. I don't mean necessarily those safety conversations, the dedicated conversations to guiding young people, making sure they're okay. That's always there, isn't it? That doesn't go away. But the
Yeah.
conversations need to be just a little bit more casual, just a bit step back. Things like, did you know ChatGPT's got ads coming in now? Did you hear that? This is what I was reading about it. And then opening up the conversation. I always think a news item is a great thing, or a TikTok you might have seen, just going to their kind of level, something that's interesting. Maybe something that you don't agree with, but maybe they agree with. But that's the conversation, isn't it? If we have those conversations that are non-judgmental, that are not personal, it's not you and your use, it's just use in general, that's where we start to have those open conversations that we often hear about. And that's where you start to really understand their thinking. This isn't one conversation, and it's not every single day, but these are regular conversations as a parent. But I think in a school as well, like in classes where it fits with what's happening at the time. I know schools are so crowded and busy. There's so much content to cover. I understand that. But AI it can be really detrimental if we're not kind of guiding young people right. And we need to make some space for that now.
Do you know what I love about that approach to the conversation is that you don't have to have all the answers to have that
No.
conversation, because often we think we have to know the answers in order to be able to tell people what they should do.
Yeah.
It's interesting because Dan and I definitely don't have all the answers. We spent 7 years talking about AI and we're still confused. And we're still learning every single day. And so if you're waiting to be an authority on something before you talk about it, then give up in the AI world, because you can never be. And that's maybe a difficulty for institutions, because institutions are used to being, especially for teachers, I guess, because they're used to being an authority. But that mindset switch of, I don't know all the answers, but let's have a conversation.
Yeah, and this is what I did my PhD in, actually. This very thing, it's that whole kind of positioning of adults and, teachers and students around technology use. And a lot of teachers felt like they're the teacher. You're the ones who know everything. That's our historical concept of what a teacher is. A lot of people go into teaching because they love that idea of being able to impart the knowledge, and that's really important. But when it comes to tech, you cannot know everything. I've been researching this space for years. I don't know there's nowhere near knowing everything. So I think that having that idea that it's okay not to know everything, you're in those conversations, you're not really trying to prove things or teach them. You're really just unpacking ideas from multiple perspectives. That takes the pressure off everyone. I think it takes the pressure off teachers. I remember interviewing a principal a while ago, and it wasn't about tech, but it really made me think about these kinds of things differently. She said, I'm a principal, but I'm a learning principal. So I said, what do you mean by that? She said, well, I don't know. Haven't got it all figured out. So I'm in this state that I see I'm constantly learning from my school, from the environment. She said, it just takes the pressure off me having to have all the information and to be able to give it to people. And I see that as the same kind of thing. You're a learning teacher or a learning principal around AI or around technology. It takes the pressure off you, but it also shows that you're really interested in finding out, developing your understanding of it and supporting. So it's a different approach, and I think it's a really sensible approach in an industry that's so overburdened as well.
My God, we're going back 20 years to the Sugata Mitra times, when he was talking about that hole in the wall project where the students would come with a question, and his answer was, well, I don't know. Why didn't you find out? And that opening of, well, I don't know, is such an important thing.
Yeah. I think so. We are bombarded at this point with information everywhere we go. It's just like, it's a way, it just keeps coming at us. But most of it's wrong. We know that. Most of it's misinformation or disinformation, more so than ever, and more so with AI. So I think being really open to learning, being very critical of the sources that you use to learn. But if you're in a school, understanding your students, your teachers, your parent community, the larger community that you're in, going to the source to find out what's happening is important, okay, rather than going to something that's from the States or something from the UK that's talking about what they're doing.
So this journey ahead is going to be a partnership between the students, the schools and teachers, and then the parents. You wrote about parents a lot in your Generation Connected book.
It.
How do you help parents to go through this? Because they're going through exactly the same journey as teachers, which is, we all know as parents, we don't know as much about technology as our kids.
No, that's right. I read that book because I obviously give a lot of advice to parents, and parents just, I don't know, they're so busy. Our whole world is so incredibly busy, and the ways that young people, their children are using technology has become very complicated. So the book is about looking at each age group and the kinds of ways that each age group actually use technology. And you might say, well, technology is changing all the time. Yeah, it is. But there are other factors that actually inform the way young people use technology. So it's the tech itself, but also socially, the kind of social worlds that they are in and their brain. So those things stay the same. So that's how you understand each age group. You have to look at all three things: the tech, the social, and the brain. So once you know that they're the three factors that you need to look for, it helps you to understand exactly what your child or what that year 8 student is doing, because it helps you to understand, oh, I get it. It's because their brain is up to this point. So socially, they're up to this point. So that tech design that they keep responding to, that's why they're going to do it. So it helps you to understand it, and then it helps you to think, oh, what's the way forward? And the way forward always needs to be not addressing one of those things, but all three things. So it's kind of a bit like a formula that I've worked out. So it's helping people to understand that very simple formula, because that helps you get into it. So I think one of the things to think about as a teacher giving advice to parents, and as a parent thinking, what am I supposed to do with my year 6 child? All they're doing is asking for a phone. What am I supposed to do? Well, there's always a lot of options, but there's always an understanding of why they're asking for it at this particular point of time. And then thinking, all right, do I give them a phone? Yes, but there's these 4 options you can use when you're giving a phone. Maybe it's not a smartphone. Maybe it's a dumb phone. So I think with parents, I think being very careful of who you're listening to with advice. There's a lot of clickbait advice on social media, tons of it. Going to evidence, the book is full of evidence. So just being really careful of who you're listening to.
Yeah, and I suppose as a parent, I had just an example of that. My daughter, who's like 14, she was caught in the TikTok algorithm of the hantavirus or whatever that's going around at the minute.
Oh,
they're very
yeah.
concerned because they're not speaking to anybody about this. It's not talked about in school. And, if you've seen a lot of that, you get worried about it. I remember we had a similar thing when I was growing up, when there was a war in Iraq, when I was teaching, actually. And, lots of the kids got concerned about that because they'd never experienced a war before. So,
Yeah.
but at that point, as a teacher, there was no social media. So you could have that dialogue because you'd explain to them about that. And I suppose as a parent, if your kids come up to you and they talking to you about something random like the hantavirus, I have no idea
Yeah.
what, I've seen some stuff on the news, but then I can say, well, you were being generated that out because it's on TikTok, but it's not all the way through the world. This is a very, very, very small population that's actually, so I having that conversation with my daughter to kind of allay her fears, but also talk about the tech and the bias that's come in with that algorithm. That the more she watches it, the more other ones she sees, and then she thinks that she can't even go shopping because there's a hantavirus everywhere, So I suppose it's having those conversations. I suppose what I'm saying is if your child comes up to you and says something random about something in the news or a person or a celebrity, then explore that, but also have the lens of, well, how did you get across that?
Yeah.
What did the algorithm serve up to you? Oh, that's interesting. TikTok showed you that or whatever.
Yeah, because their news that they're seeing isn't probably the news that you're seeing in your feed. You might be reading,
correct.
you might be going to actually media outlets and actually reading the news written by a journalist, where young people mostly aren't. They're on social media. So understanding those algorithms service different kinds of news. So the mum might get a different kind of news to her 14-year-old, both valid because it's the information you're getting over and over and over again. So it makes it feel very real and true. That's how algorithms work. You just keep seeing the same content on repeat. And if they're mentioning something and you think, oh, I haven't seen that in mine, just starting a conversation. What did you say? Show me. Just a very simple conversation. And that will start ideas about algorithms or echo chambers or data feeds, all those kinds of things, misinformation. The conversation could go anywhere. You don't want to make it a heavy conversation each time, but they just build on each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're so positive about technology and the way it impacts on young people in Australia and beyond. What's your general outlook on AI in education over the next few years? Where do you feel that's going? I know we can't see anything with a crystal ball like you alluded to today, but have you got a feeling of where this is going?
Yeah, I just want to backtrack on one thing you said, Dan. I'm generally positive, and I am, but there's two sides here. I think that we have to really manage the safety elements of technology, whether it be social media or AI. We know there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of safety issues. We all know that. It's not just that. It's got to be leveraging the positive. We know that there's tons of amazing stuff tech can do, including AI. So it's leveraging that positive. So I think good technology use is both managing the challenges, leveraging the positive. So in terms of AI, well, it fits into both those camps, that's for sure. There's a lot of risks with AI at this point because there is so few guardrails around it. But I wonder when those guardrails come in, how effective they're going to be anyway, to be honest. I know it hasn't been around that long, but it's entrenched in everything we do online. And it's doing things like making scams so much easier. And like the data and the privacy and the security issues are massive, and the way it can tap into Like we're talking about the ads that are coming into ChatGPT, it can really tap into your vulnerabilities, those intimate things you're talking about. So I think in terms of managing those risks, it's about being aware, to keeping up to date, whether you're a parent or a teacher or a school, trying to keep up to date. Maybe it's just a collective 10-minute staff meeting, what are some changes that people have noticed around AI this week? Just tapping in, starting the conversations with staff. I think that's one thing. How do you then feed those kinds of conversations about the challenges to the students and to parents? Because it has to be both, because much of the use of AI by young people will be done at home. So there's that side. And then leveraging the possibilities, using it as a sparring partner, like we were talking about, the thinking sparring partner. How do you start to do that as a school? Is it in a class? Is it homework? Like, where does that start to happen? Is it in kind of sessions that are put aside for leadership development? Where is that going? In English classes? Like, where is it going? And also starting to just keep up to date with things like Claude design, the way it can use design and create images and create design, and starting to think how things like that could actually be brought into subject learning. So I think if it's brought into subject learning, then you've got the teacher advising, putting the support around it. You have the open conversations. And I'm not saying bringing AI in full force if your school isn't comfortable with it. But starting to think of pockets where it can come in, and maybe you can leverage the possibilities for learning around it at those points.
I think the huge takeaway from this whole discussion is the word that you have used about 150 times, which is conversation. It's like that's the thing. It's technology has this horrible way of taking conversation away, especially human to human conversation. And I think that going forward, we've got to find a way to get the conversation back, even if it's about technology, even if it's about things that we don't know about or we are not an expert on. Is how do we get into a conversation, because it's through conversations that we're going to learn and make those human experiences.
Yeah, look, a lot of the technology use has shaped over time to a young person using it by themselves in their room, often not talking about it because they're terribly judged by it. That's the conversation I see 99.9% of the times when I'm in homes. And when I'm in schools, still to a big degree, a lot of teachers see the bad effects of kids spending too much time on screens, and they're real, those effects, very real. And they can really shape the way we think we need to talk to young people about technology. But if all this stuff is happening with them on their own without our guidance, then that's not good either. That's really quite dangerous for relationships, for learning, future. So conversation's incredibly important. You don't need to know everything, but having those conversations, a young person being able to share what they're doing on their device with their teacher, with their parent, that's good. I think that's really important.
Yeah, well, that's been a fantastic conversation today, Joe. Thank you so much for all the work you do in this area. All the research you do is so, so important. And I think with a pivot to well-being and supporting students in this particular time, I think the things that we're seeing out there with trends towards that and students' happiness is pivotal. So thank you for all the work you're doing and the support around that and its technology, and keep educating parents like myself as well. I keep watching you on the TV. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thanks. It was great to be on here.
Thank you so, so much.
Thank you.